as I get closer to where he went off the road, I see a big black shape in the middle of the road walking. So I have to slam on my brakes and try to swerve myself because this thing is walking in the center of the road. Because I don't see a head and I don't see arms. I just see a really big, tall person, like big, thick legs and a big, thick torso. And they're moving very funny.
But to be honest, I wish I had have seen some of her vulnerability. I wish I'd have seen her in that space so that I would have language.
And he says, no. That's not why you're angry. That's why you're mad. Mad is on the surface. Mad is a surface emotion. You're angry. And anger is deep. That cuts to your soul. You are an angry young man. And I couldn't answer. I then had come to realize over the next course of a few hours, I'm musing to myself, and I realize I've been a victim my whole life. That's why I'm so angry. And over the course of the next 19 months, this man changed my life. He helped me to realize about processing emotion and how to forgive myself and forgive others. And that's where the metamorphosis really began for me. And I learned I'm a survivor, right? I know how to survive.
I was understood for the first time in my entire life. And when I read those things and I learned, quote unquote, those things about myself that I had known forever, but never really had the semantics for, I couldn't unlearn them. Like I heard this quote years ago and it resonated with me so much. And it's like, you can choose to look the other way, but you can never again say you didn't know.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. This is the Verbal Echo podcast. My guest for today is Rafael Lugo. He is a hip-hop artist, sound engineer, and producer, and he has a lifelong experience as an abductee. He also works with Mufon. He now has a documentary out, which is Calling All Hybrids. You can get it on Amazon Prime and YouTube for streaming. So we recorded this episode a few months ago, but I'm really excited to finally be releasing it. And I hope you enjoy hearing about Rafael's experiences. But I'm going to let him dive into it and tell us all about it.
Hello, how you doing? Thank you for having me.
This is going to be super fun. I was just kidding. We should have hit record right when we first joined because we've already had a really interesting conversation. He's telling me all about his projects that he's got going on. So I'm going to let you kick it off. And I just kind of want to know like how you got started in this diverse music business.
For sure. Well, first and foremost, for those that don't know, my name is Rafael Skitz The P.L.K. Lugo. The P.L.K. standing for Prophet Lucid King. And I've been doing music for a little bit over 20 years now. In my 40s. I'm 41 in December, so super happy about that. 41 years young. And hip-hop was my first love and seems to be my driving force to be able to communicate my message. I started super early as far as writing music and stuff like that. It was mostly poetry and gangster rap in the beginning. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, being born and raised in the Bronx and in the neighborhoods that I was being brought up in, it wasn't really any other kind of music but the gangster hardcore hip hop. It's kind of where the popularity kind of came from. And in my days of making that kind of music, you know, little by little started getting better. A funny story about how I started rapping was I used to live in Spanish Harlem with my aunt on 112th and Madison in New York. And there was a apartment complex called Taft Projects that the elevator never worked, and I lived on the 19th floor. So every day when I would come home from school, I would have to walk up the stairs or whatever, and around the 12th or 13th floor, there will always be what people call ciphers, like people in circles just rapping and kind of battle rapping, and they would never let me like pass until the rapping was over. So I just remember going, you know what? One day I'm just going to hop into that cipher with a rhyme. So as a child, I wrote, like, I was like 15, 16. I wrote like the most craziest rhyme in my mom's kitchen and memorized it. And when I came home from school, I went into the crowd, and when everybody was kind of like pushing me back so I wouldn't be able to go upstairs, I was like, listen. And I started doing my rap. And when I remember, I still remember, it still really warms my heart, the way everybody reacted to me rapping that rap. I just knew it was going to be what I was doing for the rest of my life. All these gangsters and then these thugged out people just looking at little old me like I was the savior of the projects at one point. It felt really good. And I just continued on in that path. And for those that don't know, I'm also an experiencer in like, you know, extra-terrestrials and all that kind of stuff. So throughout my life, having these experiences, I never really had a coping mechanism in which I can, like, you know, tell somebody what was happening to me, which caused a lot of negative emotions, because every time I would say something to like my mother, she would say it's like a dream, is not really happening to you, or it's demonic or something negative. And I knew what was happening to me was real. So once I kind of found out how to take those experiences and kind of mold them into my music, that's when the ball really started rolling. The funny part about that is I was still doing gangster rap well into my 20s, you know, into my 30s and stuff. But I also found meditation through these experiences that I was having. And I just remember I was in my recording studio, just in this moment of meditation. And as I'm sitting down quietly, looking at the darkness of my mind, I see this little white dot. It's just in the distance. And I'm just looking at it in the darkness of my mind. And as I'm focusing on it, it rushes to me. Like all the darkness in my mind all of a sudden got engulfed by this beautiful white light. And I felt like I was being pulled out my body and just rushed to the center of the universe. Out of nowhere, I'm just floating in the middle of what I presume to be the galaxy or the universe or whatever. And I had what most would call a Kundalini experience, the God brain experience, where I kind of felt everything everywhere all at once, like that one movie from A24. I was able to really feel every emotion that everyone and every being living and plant life was feeling all at once, which was obviously super overwhelming. Like I knew what it was like to be a blade of grass, and I knew exactly what it was like to be like the wing on a butterfly at the same time. Then once I kind of grasped the realization that I was having this Kundalini experience and this profound, like feeling everything all at once experience, I was being rushed to like these little scenes and scenarios. And the first scene I was like, my body was rushed to. It was almost like I blinked and all of a sudden I'm floating in this kitchen and I'm looking at this couple fight each other, like a female and a man beating on his wife. And in the background, I can hear my music softly playing. So this man is doing negative actions to the music that I was creating. Then I get rushed and I'm floating above a car and I can see this other gentleman like tying up or rolling up some kind of drugs and getting ready to do some really hard drugs in the car. And once again, he's listening to my music. And then instantly I get this view or like this image, this flash pops up in my head and I can see a pebble falling on one side of the ocean. And then on the other side of the ocean, it was a tidal wave destroying cities. And I instantly felt like, I think what I'm making musically is just a cool song with a cool beat. But that vibrational tone that I'm putting on that imprint that I'm putting on that record is being spread out to the masses and is causing more damage than I actually knew was happening. Once I got the profound and I was able to put two and two together, I fell directly back into my body and I instantly started crying. It was like I had the turnaround point. I was at a fork in the road and I was doing this gangster music. I was getting credibility, but it wasn't really serving my passion. It wasn't serving my purpose here on earth. It wasn't serving anyone but myself. It wasn't doing anything but damage. And then once I started, like the minute I got out of that meditation, I decided no more cursing, no more negativity. And granted, I want to say this, I don't care if people curse in their music or if they say anything negative in their music. I mean, other people can express themselves however they seem fit. And if it works for them, it works for them. I'm not knocking it. But from that moment on, I knew I personally could not, I just couldn't be the one doing that anymore. I couldn't have that negative energy being projected. I didn't want to be a part of that team. I wanted to be a part of the positive team. So the first song I wrote out of that meditation was a song called Calling All Hybrids. And basically it was like a love letter to any extraterrestrial, half human that might be on Earth hiding here, thinking they're all alone. There are people on this planet that want to know about you, want to know why you're here. And it was my way of reaching out. In doing that song, it started to get a lot of burn. Like, obviously, it wasn't getting like a lot of plays, but the plays that it was reaching, the people that it was reaching, it was really profoundly changing them. I was getting emails like, hey, man, I know you don't know me, but I heard your song in Australia. And I mean, I was getting ready to take my life and you said a certain thing that made me change my ways. Or another person, I felt like I was all alone because these alien experiences was happening to me. And then all of a sudden I hear your song and it's almost like you're telling my whole story in a song, and email after email, message after message. And I started realizing that that was the mission. That's what I was here. That's what I was here to do. I was here to make music that allowed other people to know either A, that we're not alone here, you know, there's other beings out there that want to communicate with us, or that we are powerful as humans. There's such things as telekinesis and being able to like speak with your mind telepathically and predictions and so many abilities that we could do as humans that are suppressed. And if we practice this and we use those muscles in our mind, we can become, you know, more advanced spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and possibly be able to carry on and become a multi-stellar civilization, multi-galactic civilization where we could share, you know, relations with other beings and go out there and really travel the stars if we're not doing that already. So in a nutshell, my musical journey has brought me from gangster rap in the beginning to figuring out a way to finance and take care of my family, to having this profound experience that gives me a complete 180 and puts me directly on the path of enlightenment. So I hope that wasn't too long-winded, but that's pretty much in a nutshell my musical journey.
That was amazing. Absolutely amazing. And man, I got chills when you were telling me the story. A couple of words I thought of was, it was humbling to listen to your story. And also I'm sure the experience that you had was pretty profound and humbling. It seemed really validating too. And it seemed like it put you on the right path. You know, it was almost like it saved your life somehow.
100%. I mean, the amount of negativity that was coming out of this music would have in some way, shape, or form put me in a certain situation where I could have got harmed. I mean, the kind of music that you're performing, when you're performing that music, you get put in, you know, shows and situations where they're not the best environment. So yeah, eventually something would have happened for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that I do. I love all kinds of music. I'm kind of like very versatile. Like one day I'll listen to one genre, the next day I want to listen to this genre. Like I don't really have a favorite. I've always liked hip hop and rap and soul music. Oh, I love soul music and like new age music. Like I love all kinds of music. I really do. And when I heard your music, and I'm going to see if we're going to try to play some of his music at the end of this podcast. And I want you guys to definitely go check it out. It's amazing. But I guess as far as the music goes, I'm kind of interested in, so you have this amazing background starting from, like really just, like you called it in the Cypher group.
Yeah. Well,
I've heard that before, but yeah. So you really just started from the ground up and found your voice. And then you were, through this experience that you had, you were able to create a business. And I'm wondering what it's like, if you could just tell how it's like to be a mixing engineer and producer. Like what's it like a day in the life of this kind of work?
Oh man. Okay. That's actually a really great question, because a lot of people don't understand what comes to, I don't know, what really it entails to be a music producer full-time and a mixing engineer full-time. A lot of it has to do with hard times. I'm just going to be completely honest. In this day and age, everybody has a computer that's capable of like doing a majority of the mixing and mastering, if not all of the mixing and mastering. So where people excel in this space are people that add that little bit extra, people that can do a little bit more. Anybody can have this piece of equipment or that piece of equipment, or you could go to this major studio to use this Apollo or that. But it's the artist with the paintbrush that allows you to really see the picture, right? So you get a rapper to come in or a singer or an artist of some sort to come in, and they'll give you a vision. It's up to you to be able to take that vision and slap it on the canvas in a way that sonically makes sense, not only to the listener, but to the artist, because you don't want to discredit the artist. So when I'm working as a producer, mixing engineer, and a mastering engineer, the main things that I focus on is customer service. Always customer service first, customer service ahead of everything. Customer's always right. Now, granted, the customer's not always right, but when there's so many options out there, you have to be able to compete. And a majority of the people out there that have a large volume of clients don't have that personal touch. So as far as being successful as a music producer in this day and age, talent is probably third on the list. Second on the list is persistent. You have to be consistent with your social media. You have to let people know you exist, right? Because everybody nowadays has a phone, and there's more people that want to be influencers and social media marketers and stuff like that. So they're able to promote themselves a lot better, being more social media forward. Me, for instance, social media just happens to be my Achilles heel. I have to hand that off to people like my wife or my niece or other people that help me in that section, because I am like the creative brain, right? I like to sit down and play with the buttons and make the sounds. And I never really focused on, hey, once we play with the buttons and make the sounds, how do we get it to other people to listen to it, and that side of the business? So I would say second would be the consistency of your social media and the music you're making. And then first, above all, you have to be really nice to your customers. Your customers come first. You always got to treat them with care and respect. So yeah, when it comes to having a music business, I don't tend to rely on it 100%, because it's an up and down. You know, one week I can make 2, 3,000. Another week I make 100, 200. And it's because, you know, it fluctuates, especially during the holiday times. You would assume more people want to make music, but everybody's buying gifts. They don't really want to go into the recording studio. So during these times, I find ways to compensate the mixing and mastering with either making my own music and pushing it out there, or doing things like what I have on my website. There's a lot of experiencers out there that don't want to tell their stories. And what I mean by experiencers is, let's say you've had an abduction experience with an ET, extraterrestrial, but you're not quite sure it's really happening. You don't know if it's a dream, or you don't know if you want to put yourself out there, but it's eating away at you. You can hire me. You tell me your story. I won't tell nobody else, but we'll put it in a form of music or poetry to where you can get it out there yourself, and you can still feel like you're releasing that pent up energy that you have through music. If I'm not writing it for you as a ghostwriter, which is a person that will write you your music without taking any credit, just an upfront fee, I can do it as, you know, an artist that features on your record, or I can write the record for you. You can have it for yourself personally, as well as there's not enough soundtracks for books. I mean, there's a lot of great books out there with a lot of audio content. Like, you can hear the voices of people reading their books back to you. But after the book is done, a lot of people stay thirsty for more. Well, wouldn't it be awesome to have 1, 2, 3 songs that kind of embody a chapter or two of the book that you're trying to put out there? I also provide a service for that. I make soundtracks for books, which I know that sounds weird. People make soundtracks for movies and stuff like that, but not really albums for books. So those are the little ways that I try to stand out from everybody else as a writer, producer, mixing engineer. So that way I'm able to kind of like float at the top, where in a sea of all these people that kind of do the same thing that I do. So I wouldn't recommend being a music engineer at this point in time, to be completely honest, because everybody can do that. But if you're going to be a music engineer, it's because it's a passion of yours and you really want to take it to the next level, I would highly recommend knowing your social media, being really good with social, getting your equipment at least a level of status that you could compete with the industry. You don't have to have every $3,000-$4,000 piece of equipment, but to have the basics, a good interface, you know, a really good computer, some good speakers, good headphones, just the basic pieces of the puzzle could go a very long way. So I hope that wasn't too long-winded, and I hope I answered your question.
Really interesting. What kind of, do you use Audacity, or do you like use a really super high, more tech type of software?
Well, Audacity can be used for mixing and mastering, but you got to look at it like you could use any digital audio workstation, which is called the DAW. That's what we call them, right? So I personally use Pro Tools, which is industry standard, but a lot of people have been transferring to Logic, and a lot of people have been doing stuff on Reason. I've seen people do stuff on Reason. I've seen people do stuff on what's the other one? Jesus, right on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, there's just a lot of other DAW, digital audio workstations, that kind of work for everybody. I chose Pro Tools because at the time that I started mixing and mastering years and years ago, it was the industry standard. You know, that's what everybody in every big studio, to this day, a lot of major studios still use Pro Tools as their main foundation. Plus, I'm a Pro Tools certified user. I went to school and I got my certification to use the program. But with that being said, I mean, you can use so many other programs that me just saying Pro Tools is just like my personal choice of brush. You know, some would say, you know, somebody would say Logic is their personal point of brush because the way that they mix their music, it has a certain routing or a certain way that I just personally use Pro Tools because it's literally like the back of my hand. I've been using it for so long that it's so easy. But yeah, another great question. And I also produce in a program called Machine. So it's called Native Instruments Machine. And that's where I do a lot of my production. So I will produce the music in Machine, is a whole nother digital audio workstation. And I would bring those audio files into Pro Tools. And that's where I would write my music, record my music, and do all the final mixing and mastering. Once the music comes out of Pro Tools, I like to use another program to finish it off. It's called Isotope Ozone 5. Is more like a plugin, but basically you just throw your music in there and it has a lot of other bells and whistles to give it that extra sonic touch and love that makes it sound as good as other songs on, like, let's say, I don't know, Apple or Spotify or whatever. It allows you to compete. So yeah,
You're
that's
kind of a
like
genius.
Far
this is
it,
awesome. No, I mean, like, that's one of those things, like when you get into your craft, your art, and you know how to make it work, and like you went and got a certification like this to know all of these skills. And I'm sure it took a long time to like put this all together and to know how to do this, but I mean, you're an audio genius. I'm just going to say that. That's so fascinating.
I'll take it because you're right, but I'll humble myself a little bit.
No humbling. I couldn't do it. I have for my audio, which I have this awful program, and it just half the time the mixing board just like it just disappears. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to scream, It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I really have to go to bed now. But if I don't save it, I'm worried I'm going to lose it, So sure. Yeah, I'm in awe of anyone who has taken the time and to master that, because it's a really technical thing. And a skill set. It's really hard.
If you ever have time, what we could do is I'll be more than happy to like spend an hour with you. Like in the program that I use, Ecamm Live, I'm able to share my screen. So if there's ever a program that you have that you're not familiar with audio wise, I can more than likely get it. Or if I don't have it already, and I'll pull it up and show you how to use it a little bit. So you don't, it's wow. Really not that hard once you get the hang of like routing and the little easy, well, not easy steps, but the little kind of steps that a lot of people look over in the beginning. Once you knock that out, the rest is cakewalk.
Interesting. Yeah, I watched these videos on YouTube on the basics of Audacity, and I understood it. But then I ended up using another program that was more drag and drop, and there's definitely limitations with that. And I have to admit, I really don't know what I'm doing.
Well, have you considered outsourcing your audio editing? Because that's also. I got you. I got you. I was just about to say that's also.
Everyone should give this podcast a 5-star review.
I'm with that. Hey. I'm with that. I'm going to tell everybody to do it. Listen, people, 5-star reviews go a long way.
Yeah, they do, especially on Apple. Yeah. Because I mean, ultimately there are I heard like 5 million podcasts out there. How to get above the noise. You have to get like, I think, to be able to monetize your podcasts. And I know everyone hates commercials, but come on, we got to pay for our time. There's so much time that goes into doing this. If you love podcasts, you really need to support the people who are doing it. Reviews, downloads, tell everyone about your favorite podcast or whatever. And you have to get like 1,000 downloads per episode before you can get commercials. And even then, You're not really making a bunch of money. You might pay for your podcast hosting, but that's okay.
Of course. No, it takes like almost 100,000 subscribers before you get a decent light bill or something paid. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's like, trust me when I tell you, I totally get it. And that was a big part of, if you look at my social media, it's not like I got thousands of people following me. It's just very hard thing to keep up with. The youngins, I mean, I'm just going to say it. I'm 41. The youngins got it locked down when it comes to social media. My son got more followers than me, and I ask him all the time to help me get followers, and he's like, "Nope, not happening."
Nope, you on your own, Dad.
I cultivated these guys. They have a specific thing they like to. So it's like I'll never figure it out. But the way I look at it is the good stuff always rises to the top regardless. So there could be 5,000 or whatever, 5 million podcasters on any site or whatever, but I'm pretty sure 4 to 4.5 million of those podcasts are not that good anyway. So they're not going to get the,
that's a really good perspective. Like, obviously not everyone can be Joe Rogan. Hi, Joe. But he's not listening. I guarantee he's not listening to my podcast.
He might. Hello, Joe. He might.
He's probably not. But, I think you're right. And a lot of, they say 5 million podcasts. A lot of those are inactive. People get to that point where they do a show for 6 months and then they just drop it because they realize it's a lot of work and they don't have the passion for it.
Yes.
And so I think you definitely have to find the passion for what you're doing, what you want to accomplish, the kind of people that you want to talk to, because it's really about these conversations. And I'm really glad that you're here. And you were talking a little bit about your experience. And this might be a good segue for you to go into that a little bit. Let me just prelude this with, so when I started this podcast, my background is like, I'm a chef by trade and I'm also a wellness coach, and I don't really coach people around diet. It's more about like mindfulness and habits and stuff. And so I really like what you're saying about like the meditation and the mindfulness and that sort of thing. But one of my passions on the flip side is I love the 4TN topics. I love listening to podcasts about the paranormal and, mysteries, missing people, unsolved crimes, that sort of thing. I love a good mystery and I love finding the truth about things. And since things have been happening in our government with disclosure, I've been diving down more and more into finding out as much as I can about it, because it's just a giant puzzle to me. Mm-hmm. It's just a big mystery. And so the more people that I can talk to about this spreads the information.
For sure.
And I think your message really sung to me like, this guy is taking other people's experiences that might be traumatic and they might feel shame or they might not feel safe about talking about their experiences. And you're taking it and you're honoring it. You're turning it into art and you're helping them express it in a new way. And so I think what you're doing is really important and it's such a neat way of doing it. And so yeah, that's just kind of my little bit of background as far as why I find this really fascinating and so cool. And so yeah, tell me, what was your experience?
All right. Well, it's a little out there for those that don't really dive into the, extraterrestrial stuff or the, abduction experience, which I just want to clear up by saying I don't like saying the word abduction because I know it's kind of like a contract that we sign with these beings before coming onto this planet to like really do the things that we're doing. But yeah, I'm a long-time experiencer with what people would call the grays. The tall grays, the hybrid beings, insectoid mantis being named O. I had a pretty profound experience with that being. And, a couple of dream state, I don't know what to call these beings. I think they're Arcturians, but I don't want to just go out saying I've communicated with Arcturians, not knowing 100%. I just know it just the way the head looked and stuff like that. And every time I describe it to another researcher, they always go Arcturian. So, so basically at the age of 5, I've always had this fear of the dark, right? That I've never really understood. right? Let's just start there. And because of this fear of the dark, and this is always embarrassing for me to say, but I always say it because I'm hoping that it would help others out there. So I don't mind putting myself out there a little bit if it's going to help somebody else. So I was so scared of the dark that my mother would actually have to put a twin-size bed inside of her bedroom because I wouldn't sleep alone in my room. And that happened for years before I was able to sleep by myself. And because of this fear, I had this little technique that I would do when I would fall asleep. If I was ever asleep and I felt like when I opened my eyes, I was going to see something, like I had that intuition, like when you're at a restaurant and somebody's staring at the back of your head and you turn around and they're actually staring at you. If I ever felt that when I was asleep, I would wiggle my toes. And I knew that if I can wiggle my toes and they moved, then I can jump up and run off or chase whatever's in the room or hit whatever's trying to get me. But if I couldn't move my toes, then more than likely the being that was in my room had me under some kind of control of some sort, right? So I just remember this one night. I was about 5, 6 years old, and I'm in my twin-size bed, and I get the feeling, something staring at me. And I go to wiggle my toes, and I can't wiggle my toes. So I knew that when I opened my eyes, I was going to be paralyzed, and there was nothing I could do about it. And whatever I was going to see was going to be scary. I just had this feeling. And when I opened my eyes, what I saw was the traditional picture of like what a gray would be. Big bulbous head, 2 almond-shaped black eyes, a little slit where the nose would be, 2 holes where the nostrils would be, a little slit for the mouth, 2 holes where the ears would be, very frail neck. The skin complexion was gray, but more of a light, chalky gray. And it had like some sort of skin-tight suit on, almost like, looks like a wetsuit, like when you go swimming, like scuba. And it was on its body like a bluish, like a really dark blue, almost dark black color. And it's standing at the foot of my bed. And the minute I see it, I go, oh my God, like I'm trying to scream for my mother, which is sleeping right next to me with my father in another bed. And I can't move my mouth. So it sounds like, oh. And as I'm going through this struggle stage and I'm staring at this being, I can tell from the door that there's another one standing at the door and another one standing behind that one. So there's 3 of them all together. And the minute I kind of focus on all 3, I can hear in my head telepathically in a voice that, believe it or not, sounds exactly like my voice. It goes, don't worry, we're not here to hurt you. Everything's going to be okay. It's kind of reassuring me, when I here to hurt you, everything's going to be okay. And then it starts walking in between the twin-size bed and the queen-size bed. And it starts walking in between, but it's not walking, like physically taking steps. It's almost like gliding towards me. And I'm just staring at his eyes while it's gliding, and it comes so close to where its nose is about to touch my nose, and it's just looking directly into my eyes. And before it comes close enough to where it could pretty much kiss me, I black out. And when I wake up, it's morning again. So that was my first experience that's been burnt in my head. And because of the religion that I was raised in, which I'll just say it here, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, not currently practicing as a Jehovah's Witness, but for those that don't know about that religion, it's super, super strict. So I would tell my mom in the morning, hey, this thing happened to me. And she would be like, nah, it's a bad dream. And I would continue to say this, years to come. These beings would still come time to time. They would float me out of my bed through the wall, up into the crafts. I mean, this would happen a lot. And in this happening, I would continue to tell my parents, and if it wasn't a dream, it was a demon. So after a while, I just stopped talking about it because I wasn't being validated. Fast forward, because of the not talking, because of the suppression, because of everything I was being told, it made me develop a lot of social anxieties. It was hard for me to communicate with others. It was just very hard for me. For some reason, I was just not the social butterfly that I knew that I could be. So fast forward, now I'm living in Oviedo. I'm no longer living in New York, and I've already met my wife. I have 2 kids at the current time, but my oldest at the time, out of nowhere, this is a whole nother experience, but I'll just segue into that one. I'm standing in my driveway. I'm about, I don't know, mid 30s at this time, early 30s, mid 30s. And I'm standing in my driveway with my son. And my son's holding my hand. And we're both looking up at the sky at this massive UFO. And I'm talking about huge. It was so big, it blocked off almost half of the sky when I looked up, right? And I still to this day wonder, how is that UFO so big and nobody else is seeing it, right? But we can talk so much about that, and it would take so long to cover the science beyond that kind of stuff. But there is, ways to explain why nobody else sees this craft. But I'm looking at this craft, and all of a sudden, I go from being in the driveway to walking down this long hallway holding my son's hand. And holding my left hand is this really tall, skinny gray. It looks exactly like the small grays that came in my room, but we're talking like 7.5, 8 feet tall, super skinny, long fingers, the whole deal. The head's a little smaller and the neck is a lot longer. And that being is holding my hand. Until this day, I still remember how long the fingers were and how they wrapped around my whole hand. Like, I'm 6'1". To make my hand look small is, you got to be a big fella. So one being is holding my hand, and I'm perfectly fine with this, by the way. I'm just like in this trance state, not scared, like, oh my gosh, I'm just kind of tra-la-la, walking, holding hands with this being. And then my son, the same, holding hands with another being identical to the one holding hands. So they were just being escorted by these 2 beings down this long hallway. Now, the hallway looked like it went on forever, and it was just white. It was so clean. It looked like you could eat off the floor. And there was no light fixtures, but for some reason it was well lit. So it looked like it just had atmosphere. And I was just like walking down this long hallway until I approached, on the right side, a window. And it was just a square framed glass window, which I know to be a 2-way mirror now, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But at the time, it looked like a window for me, looking inside of what I consider to be a daycare, or like the lobby of a children's hospital room. It just looks like it has toys in the corner. There's a circular rug in the middle with a rocking chair. And on the back wall, there's like a mural of like a bear in a conga line with kids, and like a tiger, and they're all holding hands. It's like animals with kids in this painting on the wall. It looks like a daycare. And as I'm looking into this daycare and this hallway type deal, the being on the right grabs my son by the hand and walks him into that room. I look at the room. I look inside the room. My son sits down Indian style in the right-hand corner of the room. And then into the room enters what I think to be hybrid children around his age, like 6, 7, 9, 10 years old. They come in, like 2 or 3 of them come in, and they're wearing like a material that looks like a hospital gown, but for some reason it looks like gauze, and is wrapped around them like gauze, but it's a hospital gown. It's like a full body setup. And the reason why I know they were half human, half something else, was you can always tell in the eyes. The eyes was just way bigger than human eyes, but instead of them being really black, you could see the whites in them, and you could see the pupils and all that stuff, but they were just really big. The ears were a lot smaller than human ears, and the mouth, again, was a lot smaller than the human mouth on these kids. But they sit down in like an Indian formation, like in Indian style, like, but in a circular formation with my son. They almost like form a circle, not with him in the middle, but with him, they form a circle. And they're teaching him, or I assume that they're teaching him how to float an object with his mind, because there's just this object floating in between them, and they're taking turns pushing it without touching it to each other, almost like playing catch without touching the item. And I'm watching this, and then the tall being gestures for me to go into the room. So I turn the corner, I walk into the room. The being gestures for me to sit in the rocking chair. So I sit down in the rocking chair. And that's when I noticed that it was a two-way mirror, because now I'm looking at myself and whatever's behind me. So in the reflection of the mirror, I can see this lady come in. She, once again, does not look human, but she's a hybrid. She's half something, half human. And her eyes were really big. Her skin was really fair, very not happy, not sad, but not emotional in any way. Very kind, showing no signs of fear or trying to scare me. She hands me a baby. And this baby is super small. It looks frail. The eyes are a little dented in, almost like it was sick, and had little hair, like it didn't have too much hair. It looked like prickly hair. And the eyes were a little bigger, no small. It looked like a human baby, but it looked like it was hybrid. And they give me a bottle, and they kind of like looking. They start just staring at me, and I get this sense of like, this is my baby. For some reason, this is my DNA in this baby, and they want me to see how I interact with it, how I feed it, how I give it love. Because to me, the baby was dying, and they wanted me to figure out a way to make it live again, or to make it better, since I was the parent in some way. And the baby just didn't want to eat. And I kind of was like over the whole thing. I was like super confused in what they wanted me to do. And I kind of just blink, and I'm no longer in that room, and I'm in what looks like to be an auditorium. And it looks like it's staggered steps going up, and there's like seats around in like a kind of like like when you go see an orchestra, they have like the U seats going up in like a staggered form. But there's like 2 or 3 seats at a time. And I'm sitting next to this lady from Brooklyn, and it's just this fat Black lady sitting next to me, and we're looking at each other. And I'm telling you, I blink. I'm in this room with this rocking chair, this baby. I blink, and now all of a sudden, I'm just in this auditorium sitting next to this Black lady, and she's like, "Hey, what's up, man?" And I'm like, "What's up?" And she was like, "Where you from?" And I was like, "I'm from the Bronx. Where you from?" And she's like, "I'm from Brooklyn." And we start talking, and then I can see like, you know, in the distance in places, there's other people sitting down in 2s and 3s. But I'm just sitting with this lady, and I'm looking down, and there's this table at the front of this auditorium, and there's this little black box on top of the table. There's an archway on the right side of the place, of the auditorium place. It's like this archway, and in comes walking this being. And it's like nothing I've ever seen before. It was sparkly in nature. It looked like it had no bones, but it was moving kind of like in a jelly formation. Like it was a regular human type body. Like it had a head, it had shoulders, arms, and legs, but it didn't move like it had bones. And the inside looked like it was almost liquid and sparkly. And the head looked like a little bit like of a flicker of a flame, like it moved almost like a flame. And this being walks slowly towards this table in the front, and it gestures towards the box. And when it gestures his hand towards the box opens up from the top, and this huge hologram of Earth. And I'm talking about the best hologram I've ever seen ever in life. Like the 8K, like it felt like if I put my finger on the hologram, it would actually affect things on the planet. It just looked so HD, beautiful how this hologram looked. And at the corner of the room, I see this little meteor floating towards the Earth hologram. The meteor hits the Earth, and the Earth explodes into pieces in this hologram. And I hear in my mind, in a voice that wasn't my own, almost a robotic voice, when this happens, you will all have a job to do. And then I get a flash, almost like a blink, and I didn't hear it like in my ears. I heard it in my mind. And I get this flash in my mind of me standing in the field, like a open field with a sea of people. And I'm talking about Woodstock amount of people, just with their hands and their palm up facing the sky, and this light coming towards the horizon and then just explodes in the air and like does like a little light show, almost like the end of Independence Day, where like the debris looks like fireworks in the sky coming down. It kind of looks the same way. And then I blink again and I'm back in my driveway. I'm holding my son. My son's asleep and his legs are wrapped around my waist, head on my shoulder. I'm holding him in my hands. And the UFO that I was just on kind of just floats away slowly but surely. And I don't remember walking in my house, and it's done. That's that experience. And then the final experience that I share on the podcast is what they call a MyLab experience, or a MyLab abduction, which is when you have the military involved in the abduction scenario. So I'll say this one quick because I can drag this one out, but I'll say this one a little faster than usual. So long story short, my wife was cooking. We just finished eating dinner, and she was throwing away the garbage. As she walks out, she leaves the door open, and I'm looking at her from the living room. She's outside. She's just staring up at the sky, stiff as a board, holding this bag of garbage. And I'm like, why is she doing that? So I'm just watching her. About a minute or two passes. So I walk towards her and I put my hand on her shoulder. The minute I put my hand on her shoulder, she kind of snaps out of it. She goes, wow, the sky's beautiful right now, isn't it? And I go, yeah, you were staring at it for a while. She was like, what are you talking about? I just walked out here, looked up, and then you hit me on my shoulder. And I was like, okay. She didn't understand the time that she was staring up at the sky. So we both found it as weird, but I wanted to smoke a cigarette at the time. And at the time I was smoking cigarettes. I currently don't smoke no more, but I wanted to smoke a cigarette at the time. So we both stayed outside in front of the garage. So I'm smoking a cigarette. She's accompanying me while I'm smoking a cigarette. And sure enough, in the horizon, I see this golden light kind of rise in the distance. So I tell my wife, oh, look, babe, they must be having like a wedding or something going on. It's one of those Chinese lanterns. You're about to see a whole bunch of them go up. And then as I'm saying that, the light stops. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Chinese lanterns don't stop. So that's not that. So, oh, I know what that is. That's a helicopter. So I'm waiting for the helicopter to turn, and I'm going to see the spotlight coming at me or whatever. I don't hear propellers, and there's no turning. And it hits me. Whoa, I'm looking at a UFO right now. This is a UFO. Babe, this is a UFO. I'm going to try to connect with it. That's what I tell her. So in my mind, I go with peace, love, and all the light I have in my body. I just want to say thank you for showing yourself to us, and I would love to connect with you right now. But in order for me to know that we're connected, can you please move to the right a little bit? And as I say it in my mind, it moves. The UFO moves to the right. So my heart, I flicker and I go, oh my gosh, babe. I'm connected. So I squeeze my wife's hand. She goes, oh. And we both get excited, right? And I go, okay, I'm going to say out loud now so you know I'm connected. I say, thank you so much out loud verbally so my wife can hear me. I say, thank you so much for connecting with us. Now I want to prove to my wife that we're connected. Can you please move to the left? Right when I say left, it shifts to the left. And then me and my wife, oh, you see, I told you I'm connected. We get all excited. We're happy. As we're getting happy, the light gets brighter and dimmer. It's getting happy. It's flickering. It's getting excited. And I'm like, oh gosh, this is amazing. Right when I'm thinking that, a helicopter flies over my house. A helicopter comes from the left. A helicopter comes from the right. A helicopter comes from behind. And now all of a sudden, this bright golden light in the sky, excuse me, this bright golden light in the sky that we're communicating with is just surrounded by 5 or 6 helicopters in a circular formation. It looked like something out of a movie, Independence Day. So we're watching this. We're in awe that we're watching this go down. As I'm looking, I look to the right down to where my street is, and I see this black Durango. start driving slowly. And I get a little nervous because in Florida, there's a tint limit. And the windshield of this Durango was like limo tint black. Now, it's one thing to have the side windows black, the back windows black, but when you see a windshield completely black, it doesn't make sense. It kind of doesn't stand out. I didn't even see nobody driving towards me. So I'm looking at the UFO, looking at my wife, looking at the Durango, looking at the UFO, looking at my wife, looking at the Durango. The Durango gets to the house right next door to mine's, and it kind of speeds up a little bit and drives past us. As it drives past us, I see this green light flash. My wife still to this day says it was a blue light or a red light, but to me, I tell you, it flashed green. It was a green light that flashed right when it passed. And I didn't see the light come from inside the car. I didn't see it come from under. It's the weirdest thing. The car passes and all of my vision goes green and the car keeps going. That's the way it felt like to me. I said, babe, did you see that light? And she was like, yeah, my whole eyes went blue or red. And I was like, no, it was green. So to her, it was a completely different color. To me, it was green. So I see this car pass and it does a back turn into a driveway 3 or 4 houses down at the end of the cul-de-sac. And he's just staring at us, just parked there in reverse. And I can feel the eyes of whatever's in that car looking at us in the driveway. So now this light is starting to dim and it goes completely invisible. And now all you can see is helicopters in a circular formation around nothing. This black Durango. My wife gets a little nervous. She goes, oh my God, it's the men in black. I can't deal with this. They're going to kill us or whatever. She gets all nervous. She runs inside and I kind of stand outside for another 2-3 minutes and then I go inside. The weirdest thing happens afterwards. I walk to the kitchen. We talk about it for literally a minute and then we don't even bring it up no more. Now, the reason why I call that weird is because let that happen today, it will be the topic of conversation for the next 5, 6, 7 hours and days to come. So for me to just talk about it for a couple of minutes after having this crazy experience, just when I think back on it, it just doesn't make sense. So anyway, we go about our day. And we go about our evening and we end up watching Nacho Libre on Roku. It was on Netflix that night. So we end up watching Nacho Libre with the kids. The kids fall asleep on my couch. My wife is on the recliner. I'm on the love seat. The house is completely dark because we like to watch movies like it's a movie theater and we have a big screen with the whole system or whatever, right? So the house is completely dark and I can see the time bouncing on my TV like a screensaver. So it's 10:53. I know it's 10:53 p.m. You can't tell me it's not 10:53. I have a 80-inch TV and the time is bouncing all over. So I know it's 10:53. I know it's there. So my wife is talking to me, and as she's talking to me, she goes, shh, 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 be quiet. And I go, what happened? She goes, I think somebody's trying to get in the house. And I go, no. She goes, be quiet. And as I be quiet, I hear somebody jiggling at my front doorknob. And I'm like, yo, is somebody jiggling at the doorknob? She was like, yeah, be quiet, be quiet. So I'm like, okay, here I go. Instantly, I get the thought, oh, it's probably one of my friends trying to play a prank on me. They see all the lights is off. They probably think I'm in the studio. They probably want to see, it's a friend. It has to be a friend. So I had the type of door that had 2 windows in the front with curtains on it. So my idea was leave all the lights off. They can't see me walking towards the door. And then the minute I get to the door, I'll rip the curtains open and scare whoever's at my front. If it's a friend of mine, I prank him. If it's not a friend of mine, I make whoever run away that's trying to break in. So it's a win-win. I start walking towards the door in silence in the darkness, and I have a hallway right before I get to my front door on the right side that leads to my recording studio, a bathroom, and another extra room that I have. And right when I get to where that hallway is, I look down the hallway and the brightest white flash just hits my eyes. And I'm talking about engulfs my whole vision. Now I wake up and I'm in my back bathroom, in my bedroom bathroom, laid out in a starfish formation on the floor without a shirt on. And I can hear this ringing in my ear, like, ee. me, like it's like that. And I feel my whole body is like numb, like when your arm falls asleep, but my whole body feels that way. And I just remember this smell in my nose of like anesthesia and this feeling in my lower back, almost like a tingly sensation in my lower back. It was the same sensation I got when I had surgery a couple of months before that. So it gave me the same feeling of like an anesthesia was used on me. And instantly I get this primal, my kids. Where are my kids? And I jump up off the floor and I run through my bedroom. I run back out to the living room. And to my surprise, my wife is sitting in the most uncomfortable position with her knees almost hitting her chin. She's in the love seat, like laid out, super uncomfortable. It just looks like nobody can ever fall asleep in that position. My son's on the couch. His feet is where the pillow should be, and his whole body is underneath the blanket. And then my youngest son is underneath my kitchen table with a blanket and a pillow, sleeping. And I'm like, what is going on here? I turn around and I wake up my wife by slapping her on the foot, like, babe, wake up, wake up, wake up. What's going on? She snaps out of her sleep and she goes, what happened? What happened? I look at the time on the clock. It's now 2:40 something in the morning. And to me, I blinked and it was 10:43. So there's a lot of missing time there. And and I tell my wife, I go, babe, what happened? And she goes, I don't know. I just remember telling you that somebody was jiggling at the door. When you got there, everything went white in my eyes and you woke me up right now. That's all I know. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's the end of that night. 3 days later, I'm sitting down in my living room, midday, it's like 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm hearing people in my backyard. I'm like, what's going on, man? I'm playing video games in my living room. I'm hearing people walking around in my backyard. Sure enough, there's these 3 big dudes back there. Like I'm 6'1". They were like 6'4", 6'3", beefy, muscular guys in my backyard. So I open the back door to my patio and I go, yo, I mean, what's going on, guys? Can I help you with something? Like, what are you doing here? And they look, oh, don't worry about it. We're looking for a drone. Have you seen a drone? And I said, no, I haven't seen no drone. No, I'm not going to lie. I was a little intimidated. So I wasn't going to tell them to really leave. There was 3 of them. They're all bigger than me. They looked really intimidating and they didn't look like they wanted to smile and be friendly. They just wanted to do whatever the hell they wanted to do in my backyard. So I left it alone. I started walking to the front door. My wife is talking to a female, looks like an agent. She looks exactly like the Terminator, the lady from the Terminator, the main lady from the Terminator that'd be running off. They had like military gown, had the vest on, hat with the dark glasses, and she's saying, oh, we just lost a drone in the background. In my opinion, those were military personnel making sure to cover up their tracks. So that's the MyLab abduction. So I gave you the early days, the hybridization program, and the MyLab abduction in a nutshell. So those are my alien experiences. And I have more I can tell you, but I figure we could, see.
Well, and I think it's interesting that you have collaboration with a lot of these, like your wife was there. And I mean, I'm sure you guys have talked about it. What about your kids? Did they ever, like not the most recent one that you just told me about, the one where you're standing in your driveway, do your kids
don't remember?
You're holding your son. He doesn't remember anything.
Not a thing. I tell them all the time, like before we go to sleep, we do prayers. And I always put in the prayer for them to remember their dreams and to let me know their dreams in the morning, if anything feels out of place. And every morning, they never tell me anything happens. And I don't like to push it on them. So it's like, if they tell me.
You don't want to plant something in their head and then have it be. So that's not.
I just say, if you have any dreams, let me know. Because they used to feel like dreams to me in the beginning when I was a child. So I just tell them, you have any dreams, just let me know in the morning and I can decipher it that way. But yeah, so far so good. I can kind of feel like there's something going on subconscious because they have the same fears I used to have as a child. But then again, I don't want to like project my own experience onto them. So I kind of just, if they're not telling me, it doesn't happen to them. That's the way I look at it.
And you said that earlier that you spoke to someone in Mufon and told your experience too, and they validated. How was that experience? I mean, as far as like meeting someone and getting some validation.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off, but it was a turning point for me. Before I met these people, I was having strong people. Like I was hiding knives around my house in odd places because I never knew when I was going to be taken, and I always wanted to be prepared. It was those little things that showed a fear. Like I was always scared that something was going to happen. And it wasn't until I started talking to Miss Denise Stoner that she was able to validate my experiences. So what happened was I was watching a documentary about experiencers one day, and I'm having these experiences. I'm having this PTSD about it, whatever. And I'm sitting down and I'm watching this documentary, and I just start bawling, crying like a baby because everything in this documentary was my life. It was like, how do they know that this is happening? So this was the first time I found out that there were other people going through what I was going through. So in watching this documentary, I wish I could remember the name of the documentary. I always forget. But in watching this documentary, there was a psychiatrist in this documentary. And that's the first thing that I was like, I got to make sure I'm not crazy. I just need to make sure I'm not crazy. I feel like I'm crazy saying these things. So I called the psychiatrist that was in this documentary. And I'm thinking when I called this number, right, that I was going to get like a secretary and I had to make an appointment to talk to the doctor or whatever. And it ended up being the same guy that I watched minutes before on this documentary picking up the phone. And I was so flustered because I wasn't expecting it. I was like, and he was like, okay, just take a breath. Like, really? He was like, just take a breath and tell me everything from the beginning. And I was like, okay, when I was 5. And then I basically everything I just told you, right? And to that point, I told him. And he was like, wow. What I can tell you right now is you're telling me things that you can't find on YouTube or you can't find on any books. You have to be a researcher in the field to know certain things that are not out there, and you're hitting all the things that are not out there. I can tell you right now, you're not crazy. And your story is so profound. I would love to introduce you to a friend of mine. So do you mind if I give you her number? Her name is Denise Stoner. And I said, please give her the number. It's all good. Do it. So once again, I'm assuming I'm going to get a phone call in a week, couple of days. Person's going to be busy. Within an hour or two, I get an email. Can I talk to you immediately? And I was like, yeah. I give her my number. I get a phone call. Hello, my name is Miss Denise Stoner. Tell me everything from the beginning. And once again, I tell her my whole experiences, everything from the beginning. And she told me, I can tell you right now, you're not crazy. She gave me advice about what to do instead of hiding knives. She said, hide flashlights, because when you shine the little flashlights in their eyes, the little grays hate it. And it was like the first time ever that I would say to somebody, I'm meeting these beings, and they would tell me, oh yeah, this is the way you deal with them. They deal with me like that all the time. I was like, oh my God, you go through this too. I'm not alone. So this was an amazing feeling. And then in telling her, we got this cool rapport, and she was like, listen, this is a very your story is incredible. The amount of, have you ever been regressed? And I was like, no, I've never been under any hypnotherapy or nothing. These are just my memories of stuff that I remember happening to me. She was like, I need to meet you. Can I come meet you? And I was like, what, like come to my house? And she was like, yeah, I want to come to your house. And I was like, okay, come on over. So she came a week later, like 7 days later. Miss Denise Stoner is in my house with this lady called Miss Terry Lynch. And she was the head director of Mufon for Florida State at the time. So I have Denise Stoner, which is a high-level researcher in the field. She's wrote books on experiencers. She's spoke to thousands of experiencers and wrote reports and all this stuff. And she's telling me I'm top 10 experiences she's ever heard of out of thousands. And she's in my house with the lead Mufon investigator. They're taking soil samples. They're checking for radiation. They put this little magnometer, like something that can show you the electric magnetic energy in the area or whatever on my table, and she told me move the needle. And I said, what do you mean move the needle? And she goes, I don't know. What do I mean? Move the needle. And I was like, how do you want me to move the needle? You want me to touch it? She was like, no, don't touch it. Just move the needle. And I was like, but how? And she was like, I don't know. Just do it. And in doing it, I take my palm and I put it close to the thing, and the needle goes, meow, and goes back down. And I'm like, whoa. And she was like, mm-hmm. And she writes down in her thing, in her notebook. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, where's the money coming in? Now they're going to tell me aliens are abducting me for $1,000. They can make them go away. Like I'm waiting for them to hustle me in some way, right? And they're not. They're just pulling out paperwork. Which aliens are you seeing? And I'm pointing the ones that I see. They're making notes. I tell them about the experience that my mother has as a child. And that's when things got really weird. Well, let me go back to the magnometer because I left something out. The battery got completely drained out of the machine. So they took the batteries out. She opened a new pack of batteries, put the batteries back in the machine, told me to do it again. I made the needle move again and completely drained the batteries, a brand new set of batteries again. And she was like, listen, I don't know why they're dying so fast. I just put these new batteries in. But anyway, fast forward to what I was saying. I told her about the experience my mother has as a child. Her face kind of goes white. She pulls out her notes. She goes through her papers frantically, like a couple of papers. And then she shows me a page of exactly what I said about what happened to my mother, but it happened to another lady in the same area of Puerto Rico that my mother does not know anything about. And it was identical to what happened to my mother, happened to this lady. A light came to pick her up, missing couple of hours, came down from the light, spinning on the floor. The same area of Puerto Rico within like 5-6 miles, the whole 9 yards. And she goes, yeah, you're legit generational abductee. Like, I'm pretty sure if you walk on like, do you have problems with like electrical things? And I was like, look at every light in my house. If I have 4 light bulbs in every lamp fixture, 3 of them are out, 1 of them works. And in my bathroom, it's just lights can't stay on around me for too much. Light bulbs explode around me when I'm really ramped up in energy. I tell her this, and she goes, the next time you walk your dog outside, pay attention to the street lights. So I walked my dog that night when she left, and sure enough, as I'm walking underneath certain street lights, they're turning off as I'm walking underneath it. So I'm like, okay, maybe I can turn off streetlights. So I'm sitting down on my porch one day and I'm just staring at a streetlight and I'm just looking at it and I just go off and it shoots off. And I'm like, oh, on, and it flickers on. I point at another one, off, and it turns off. And I start doing this. So I start recording it. I show it to my wife. My wife is like, yo, this is crazy that you could do this. Everybody thinks I'm timing it in some way. So I go like 3 blocks down. Sure enough, as I'm walking, I'm showing my wife that one. I get closer to it, it turns off. So she's telling me about this electromagnetic energy. I'm noticing that I can affect certain kind of electrical things around me. I can remote view easier than most people. I'm really good at figuring out, like if my wife were to hide something in the house, I could close my eyes and locate it without, searching too hard. If she loses her keys, I'm like, they're underneath the bed and they'll be there. It's like certain things that I can do. And Miss Denise Stoner tells me, listen, you are a 100% experiencer. I'm going to validate you. Everything's on point. So to answer your question, it was a crazy experience because nothing like that has ever happened to me before. I've never been researched in any way, shape, or form. And it was a beautiful experience at the same time because instantly it shifted my point of view from being alone to being a part of a community. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, now I can talk about this a little bit more. Still scared to like do it in public, but I was going to groups now. I was meeting other people like me, which obviously helped me out so much in getting out my shell. So if you're out there and you're listening to this, I strongly and highly recommend that obviously go out there and if you feel like you need to get help or if you feel like you need to talk to somebody, always go that route first, right? Let's make sure that you're okay mentally and healthy. But after we get over that hump and this is still happening to you, find a community of people that are going through the same experiences. I found that when I found my tribe, I was able to really unleash a lot of that negative weight that I had holding me back in social situations or in my own personal life. So 100% would recommend, obviously, getting help if necessary. Like, not everybody that hears voices is talking to extraterrestrials, right? So let's make sure that we're healthy and we're at the proper mind state to have communication with these beings, right? And then once we find out that we're healthy and we're at a good mind state and these things are still happening to us, find a community. That's 100% what I would recommend. So there you
You're
go.
a part of CE5, right?
Yes,
And
100.
yeah, and I know you have some
CE5
connections.
community.
Yeah, I know you have some connections with that. And could you just tell the audience a little bit about what CE5 is? And
Yeah, for
you know,
sure.
like, I mean,
Like
Stephen
how it
Greer,
works.
Dr. Stephen Greer has started it, and he is the person, the man, just amazing. He is pretty much the sole driving force behind all of the disclosure going on in our government. Everything you hear on YouTube now and you see on CNN and whatever, all the hearings,
He's
Stephen
one of the
Greer.
guys on the front line. Yeah, he's been on the front line for a while. I had the pleasure of coming to see him when he did his talk over in Gaia at the Gaia Sphere. For those that don't know, I'm also a Gaia ambassador. I help get people, familiar with Gaia.com. So for those that don't know, go to GAIA.com and go check out Gaia. It's pretty much YouTube for everything we're talking about esoteric. It's where you're going to find the good information. So I highly recommend you do the 7-day free trial. And if it's for you, please go over and give Gaia some love for sure. But CE5, when I saw Dr. Stephen Greer there, I mean, I've heard of CE5 before I went to go see his talk, right? But what CE5 is a close encounter of the fifth kind, right? So the first kind, if I'm not mistaken, I think is seeing a UFO in the sky. The second kind is a physical landing of a UFO. Third kind is a being, like seeing a being come out of a UFO. Fourth kind is being taken onto a UFO. And the fifth kind, which is a CE5, is initiating contact with the UFO for it to come to you. So I would strongly recommend for you guys to look up Dr. Stephen Greer and find out how to properly do the CE5. There's an app that you can use. You could go look up on the Apple Store. I'm pretty sure it's called like the CE5 app, or you could just find it.
I think it's just the CE5 app. And I've heard mixed reviews on the app, but you can also go to his main website, and he has group meetups all over the country.
Yeah, everywhere.
And
yeah, the reason
when you
why
start
I love
diving
that
in, when you start diving into this, it's so validated with. This has been going on he's been doing this research for. Oh my gosh, we could talk about another rabbit hole, but he has, I think I heard 10,000 documented, completely vetted reports from military, civilian. I know that number is probably wrong. I'm just rounding around. and they're trying to corroborate. They're putting it into a massive data bank, and they're giving it to Congress.
Yep.
And it's a massive undertaking. And he's such a genuine person. He gave up his career in medicine to.
He's a good dude. I like him.
He's very. He is legit.
Yeah, no, 100% legit.
Yeah.
He has a lot of information on the subject. And when we did the CE5 at Gaia, we had UFOs flying over Gaia. So there was a dude that was able to take pictures. It happens. It's a legit thing. Every CE5 I've done by myself, I've had UFOs. I do it with my kids. They see UFOs. I tell my kids what we're going to do is we're going to call our star family. I call them my star family. And then when I lead the meditation, I like to do what they call vectoring. Dr. Greer teaches you how to do this, in which you kind of, like a satellite, kind of go up, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, zoom in. And the way these UFOs work is a lot of them communicate on consciousness. Like a lot of them move via consciousness. So when you project your energy up there, you project your positive thoughts. For some reason, the equipment on those UFOs can pick up those thoughts. And if you amplify that by a group, you tend to get some pretty cool things happening overhead. So it's one of the things I really love to do is take groups out to do CE5s. I haven't done it in a while, but yeah, I like to take small groups out to have some fun under the stars and, play a little music and some cool vibes. But I definitely would recommend you looking up anything that has to do with CE5. I think it's a beautiful thing to do with open-minded, and if you want to have fun out there and really look for some UFOs, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, and he's got a couple of documentaries out too, and I think he just released a new one. They're all on. I think are they on Amazon? Not I can't remember. But they're out there.
Speaking of documentaries, I actually have a documentary coming out pretty soon myself.
Right. So let's pivot real quick. And you have a podcast, and you have a children's YouTube channel.
Yes, I do.
Tell us.
All right. So the podcast first off, I have a documentary coming out about my experiences and the way I use my music to interact with these beings, called Calling All Hybrids, UFO and ET Contact. And it should be on Amazon Prime by the end of the month, beginning of next month. And it should be on YouTube and Vizimo for purchase as well. So please look out for that. Show me some love, send some reviews. Let me know how you feel about that. And as far as my podcast goes, I'm hoping to relaunch it sometime next month. It's called the Hybrid Podcast, kind of staying within the hybrid universe. And what I like to do on my podcast is interview other contactees and other people that use art in some way to communicate their message of what they're trying to do out into the world. So that's kind of what the Hybrid Podcast is all about. And as far as Needles and Scratch, which I'm super happy to announce that children's show is a two-time Telly Award-winning show. No, excuse me, two-time Telly Award-winning show. So super proud and happy to say that we're Telly Award-winning. And Needles and Scratch is a really cool children's channel on YouTube, which we're turning into a children's show, where it's two puppets. There's an autistic little brother puppet called Scratch, and then his sister is called Needles and Scratch. And basically we teach kids how to tie their shoes, about the planets, about all sorts of things, how to use the potty, what to do during the Halloween, but we do it in a cool hip-hop way. We do it in rap form and I know there's other cartoons that do it with cool music, but what I like to tell people is the music that we do is actually good. We make really good beats that can stand the pop and the charts and stuff like that. So
that's so cool. I mean, it's so cool to be a dad and want to spread the love and do some really cool stuff for other kids.
Oh, I love it.
I can tell that you just love your family, and
All
I think that's
about
so
it.
cool. Yeah.
20,
Maybe
20
your little ones.
22 years. 22 years
Oh.
with 22 years with my wife, and my oldest is 13, my youngest is 9, and I tell you, the best thing in the world is when they give me kisses before they go to sleep, and they tell me good morning and when they wake up. So it's like the best. I love being a dad. I love it.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome, man. I mean, this is just. I can't wait to get we're gonna have to split this into 2 episodes.
I'm okay with that.
That's so cool. Yeah, you guys. I'm really. And do you have any other projects going on, or that's pretty much it right now?
Right now, that's pretty much it. I am working on an album called Sagittarius. No, my last album was called Sagittarius A-Star. This one is called Seriously from Series B. And basically, it's just a continuation of my last album, but that shouldn't be out till the end of next month, beginning of January. And yeah, as far as coming back on, it's my documentary gets on Amazon, and I'll have to do another podcast run to kind of promote it a little bit more. So I'll be more than happy to come back on and continue this conversation and spread a little bit more love and knowledge.
Absolutely. And you are on SoundCloud and YouTube, right?
Yes, you can find me on all streaming services, on any streaming service under Skitz The P.L.K. So that's SKITZ, the, and then P.L.K. And all my music comes up on any streaming service from there. And then if you want to go to my SoundCloud, it will be soundcloud.com/listen, the number 2, and Skitzo, SKITZO. That's my SoundCloud. And then if you want to reach out to me personally, I have a Facebook group called Calling All Hybrids, the CE5 Connection. You'll be more than happy to join that group. I'm easily accessible there. And then you can also hit me up on Twitter. And on my Twitter account is at The Real Skitzo. So The Real and SKITZO. Come holler at me over there. Follow me on Twitter and come. I mean, I'm always doing spaces in Twitter and holding groups where we're having, long form discussions and stuff like that. So if you guys want to continue on the party, come on over and come hang out on Twitter.
Absolutely. Do you have any plans for doing any CE5 meetups here in Colorado?
Actually,
because I want to come.
It's cold to do it, but yeah, the next time.
Not right now. Maybe not in winter. Maybe. Maybe
it's cold to do it now. But when the spring comes, you'll be a special guest. I'll definitely have you.
Oh man. Oh, this is so cool.
I'll have you lead the meditation.
I would love to. That's so cool. Yes. All right. Yeah. Oh, it's so cool. I love these conversations. Well, I want to thank Skitz for coming on. This conversation has been
I had a blast. To
mind
be honest,
blowing.
This time flew by the way. It just flew.
Yeah. I mean, I looked up and I'm like, oh man, went over our time. Oh well. His wife's probably like, I had dinner ready 35 minutes ago.
They have microwaves. We will be fine. Exactly.
All right. Well, from one Colorado person to another Colorado person, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been, I know I sure enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, and I will definitely be on, and I can't wait to share and promote this. And please, 5 stars, guys. Come on. We need those comments and we need those 5-star reviews. So show some love. For sure.
Show some love. Thank you.
All righty.
Hey, thanks for listening today to another great episode. I sure enjoy hearing about these experiences, and I hope you do also. Be sure and like or follow this show by leaving a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. If you have an experience or story you'd like to share, be sure and reach out to verbalecho@gmail.com. See you in the next episode, friends. Have a great week.